Honestly, the first investor we got was somebody who we took out on a pickleball court. So we played pickleball with him, and he brought his son, his younger son, and his son loved it. And I think it was an experience that he felt he could connect with his son maybe in a way that somehow he couldn't. His son didn't really play a lot of sports, but he loved pickleball. So that was our first bite, and it just felt like, okay, like they understand what pickleball can do for the community. And that was really the triggering, or the thing that we could all align on, is that this game is exploding and it's going to go places.
I'm Emily Washkovic, Yelp small business expert. Behind the Review features conversations with business owners and customers who wrote one of their Yelp reviews. In our discussions, we talk about lessons they've learned that can be used by other businesses to improve their own reviews and their bottom line. This week, we're doing things a little differently. Today, you're going to hear and see a conversation between myself and the owners of Rally, a pickleball and craft cocktail club in North Carolina. Pickleball has become a very trendy activity, but these founders were onto the fun long before it was popular, and their business evolved and launched as the game became more known. Then, on Thursday, and on any podcast platform, you'll be able to hear us dig in deeper to the Rally experience and interview reviewer Megan B. We'll also go deeper with owners Barrett and Meg and talk about some of the things their business does to curate and engage customers in a way that makes them want to come back and spread the word about the business. Now, here's Rally's origin story.
I'm Barrett Worthington, co-founder and CEO of Rally.
I'm Meg Charity, co-founder and president of Rally.
And the business actually got started almost 7 years ago. Which surprises a lot of people because many people that we speak to hadn't even heard of pickleball more than 2 years ago. And definitely, the game has been around for much longer, since the 60s. But definitely got its like huge sort of revival and hit mainstream in basically the pandemic. We learned about the game while I was in business school. We started a business together that was essentially an online platform that connected tennis and pickleball players with people in their community that could teach them on a freelance basis. So the whole idea was to make those two sports more accessible and more affordable to the average person. Meg and I both come from tennis backgrounds. Meg at a very high level, me at a very social, recreational level. But we threw pickleball on the platform kind of on a whim. We had been hearing about it. We were curious to see, what it was like and who was playing it. But we were just blown away by the instant interest and the sort of community that was forming around this sport, where you'd put two people on a court together with no athletic background or even nothing in common, and they were instantly having a rally. They were having sort of creating friendships that might not have formed otherwise. And so we were just really impressed by this quirky game and what it could do from a social perspective. Really, the fact that it was an active pursuit was almost secondary. It was just what really interested us was the ability to make friendships form through this game. And so we kind of were early believers that the game was going to take off with a younger generation. At the time, a lot of the people who did know about pickleball kind of knew about it in the context of it being kind of more of a senior citizen sport being played at retirement communities. Not to knock on that at all, but we just thought there was a future for the game that was going to be more young, active millennials who are looking to make friends. And so we kind of pivoted in our model to focus more on the social side, less on the instruction side. We started hosting these large festivals called Picklefest. And essentially what it was we had beer trucks and food trucks and live music, and it was just a fun vibe that happened to have pickleball there. And we scaled that concept to the point where the last Picklefest that we did brought people from all over the country to attend basically 3 days of fun and games and some pickleball. And, hopefully the goal was that everyone left having made, friendships that they might not have made otherwise. So we did that for just under a year and then stepped back from it and said, we really believe in this game. We really believe in its ability to bridge differences and build community. And so we wanted to really kind of refresh the concept of like a country club. We wanted to make it young and accessible and inclusive, but still take that core idea of building community around sport. And we felt like pickleball was just the perfect vehicle to do it. So that's the very long-winded background. We took a few years to really nail the details, to build the team, to raise the money, and to find the real estate, of course. COVID fell in the middle of that whole process, which obviously delayed things. But we opened our first venue here in Charlotte, North Carolina, about a year and change ago. So it's been a wild ride, and our first year has been just really incredible because the community that we've built, just the regulars that are forming that really love Raleigh as so much more than a pickleball place. That's been the coolest thing to see happen over this past year. Anything to add?
No, I think you covered most of it. At least the founding story.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And we'll dig in a little deeper. I'm honestly, pickleball being like the new rage is one of the reasons I said to my PR guy, like, I think we could turn this into two. Like, there's really something here. Normally we do it with like, some of those like bigger, longer stories, but there's something really cool about what you all did that sounds like you were tapped in before it became big, but you're kind of bringing together like people and using this as the connector, which is so cool. Can you take me back again to like 7 years ago when you had this platform where you were connecting people? Was that in the same geographical location? You were in the Carolinas?
No.
No. Okay, take me to
Yeah,
that.
we were in Charlottesville, Virginia, because that's where Barrett got her master's degree at Darden. So yeah, it started way back then in Charlottesville, and the platform was actually more geared towards instructional when we first started. So on the tennis side, like we had clinics, and then on the pickle side, I think from the start, pickle was a little bit more social.
Mhm.
And that's when we started realizing, hey, like, what if we completely pivoted away from the instruction, focus only on the social? Because that's really what was resonating with the players. They really were just using pickleball as an excuse to meet other people. And the game is so accessible and easy to play that it allowed for a larger group of people to come together. Versus tennis, you have to be very specific in skill level and background, and sports background specifically, that it made it a little bit harder to achieve the same thing that pickleball could achieve.
And it was this like unique game because, as I said, Meg and I have very different athletic profiles and backgrounds.
Right.
And we'll get on a tennis court together, and it's not that fun because I can't keep up with her and she's bored. But pickleball, even though she's better than me, we can get on a court and have fun. And if we can do that, we knew that there was this really broad audience that could have the same experience.
And that's something that we, I guess, champion at Rally as well, is we don't like to build our programs really forced and focused around levels. Because of that exact reason, we want to make it more accessible and more social. We really highlight the social aspect of the experience at Rally. So unlike a lot of the other pickle concepts that you'd see around the country, we almost don't even have a rating system. We just have two groups. We call it social and competitive, and that's it. You choose either you want to do social today or a little bit more competitive, and those are the only two options that we offer right now.
I love that. And I think it's so cool how you're building your own community subsets within Rally, and that helps people feel comfortable. I think when you're talking about different skill levels, sometimes that makes some people not even want to try. So it's cool that you took this approachable language to kind of help people as well. Before you had your own space, talk to me about how you were leveraging like regular outdoor spaces, like just the difference and the pre-times of having your
Yeah.
own like
Yeah. Well, I mean, at
space.
the very, very start, we were on platforms like Meetup, and just using public tennis courts that we would go out in line with, like,
With painter's tape.
yeah, to make pickleball courts on the tennis courts. That was really early days. And then we started pitching local country clubs. In Charlottesville, there are a handful, like 3 or 4, prominent tennis country clubs. And at the time, maybe some of them had heard of pickleball, but none of them. I mean, today, every country club is converting tennis courts into pickleball courts. But back then, that wasn't happening yet. And so we really had to pitch them. We said, this is a great way to sort of tap a new audience. Like, so we would go to them basically and say, we want to do this event here. We'd pay whatever we had to pay to book the courts for the day. Maybe they would give us a discount if we could really convince them that we were going to bring in a new audience. But then we would either use their food and beverage team, or we'd bring in outside people. But that was always critical. We said, look, this is not just going to be a sports tournament. This is going to be a vibe. We're here to create something fun. And, I think that was our earliest experience of having to pitch. Before we pitched investors, we pitched the people that would sort of help us, experiment with this concept.
Amazing. Okay, let's talk about investors. I didn't even know. I hadn't done enough like background research. Tell me that story. Had you been kind of for a while building out your whole business plan and then you realized like now's the time we need support? What did that journey look like for you?
We as soon as we really figured out that we wanted to do something large scale, because these Picklefest events, we weren't making any money. We were breaking even because we'd have to obviously pay to rent the courts, and everything we did cost just as much as we earned from it.
And it was hard to scale that business plan, always relying on an external venue facility to work with our schedule and kind of align with the vision that we had for our program. It kind of led us to thinking, I think, like, what do we need to really scale this? And we were like, okay, we want our own space.
And with that, we knew from the beginning, we'd have to raise money, because that's many, many millions of dollars that we did not possess. So, really had no experience doing that before. I, just came out of business school. So I was like, all right, we got to do this by the book. I wrote probably a 60-page business plan that to this day I don't think anyone has ever read. We'd always provide it and they'd be like, yeah, okay, look at the numbers, good, let's go.
Send me a one-pager.
I know, nobody wants to read 60 pages. Lesson learned on that front.
But it helps you, like you were conceptualizing this together.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It was more helpful for us, probably.
Yeah, you flesh out all the details and you sort of have this Bible, even if only the two of us have ever read every minute of it. It was definitely a part of the process. And then, we set out. I mean, the thing about fundraising that anyone will tell you is you have to talk to 100 people before you get one yes. And that's absolutely not an exaggeration. And then I will say, your first yes leads to a couple more and it becomes a little easier after that. But we raised about $15 million in total. So no small feat. We're definitely, proud of having accomplished that. And it's gotten us to this point. Yeah. So we're on the cusp of a larger fundraise to start expanding, but that's perhaps another chapter.
Yeah, that's so exciting though. And that is a lot of capital. Talk to me a little bit, as much as you're comfortable, with how you were kind of going about deciding if people were the right fit once they were interested. Was there a certain feeling or alignment on values, or maybe what they wanted for the exchange of capital that you kind of used as your benchmark?
I guess I can start. It took a while for us really to hit the right investor, because it is such a specialized and at that time completely new concept. So we really had to find a similar concept, and Topgolf at the time was the closest to what we could envision the space being, which we don't like to call ourselves that, but it was at least this entertainment industry is what we could compare. But at that time, we were thinking, should we talk to sports investors, or should we talk to hospitality investors, or should we talk to real estate investors? And they were all looking for something different. And they were also binary in their thinking, that they couldn't understand the other three pillars of the investment. So it actually did.
And the number one question we would get is, well, are
Yeah.
you a restaurant or are you a sports venue? And
Yeah.
we'd say
Neither.
or yes and or both, or
Yeah.
like, we don't like that question. Ask another one.
Yeah, it took a long time to find that person who was like, okay, I see what you're doing here. And honestly, the first investor we got was somebody who we took out on a pickleball court. So we played pickleball with him, and he brought his younger son, and his son loved it. And I think it was an experience that he felt he could connect with his son maybe in a way that somehow he couldn't. His son didn't really play a lot of sports, but he loved pickleball. So that was our first bite, and it just felt like, okay, like they understand what pickleball can do for the community, and that was really the triggering, or the thing that we could all align on, is that this game is exploding and it's going to go places. And we like to call it a game and not a sport, even though it is growing as a professional sport, and who knows how far that's really going to go in the future. But to us, it's not. We don't want to see it for our business as a sport, but more of a game like ping pong or cornhole, or a game you can just enjoy with your friends without getting too intense.
I love that. I think it's such a unique positioning of it. And I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we have pickleball like all over. I have a little park that's just 2 blocks from our house. It's a public park. And a bunch of the neighborhood association members like got it officially relined. So now there's tennis and pickleball on the same court. There's all these elementary schools that just opened, and they have pickleball lines on like the concrete of the playground areas outside. It really is like something that everyone kind of knows what you're talking about when you say it. I just want to get you guys to give me a few more sentences about that period where it wasn't that well known and you were trying to really get people to like understand it. And I think you hit on it really well, that pickleball kind of levels the playing field and it's accessible. And that was why you wanted people to be excited about it. But did you have anyone that was like, well, isn't that boring?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
like an old person's. Okay, so how did you navigate that? How did you get them to understand?
The two biggest kind of pushbacks we got were, that's for old people, and we were very clearly pitching for a younger audience, so there was a disconnect of that'll never happen. And then the other piece was, because a lot of the times we would speak to tennis players or people who at least understood the tennis industry, and they would say, well, pickleball is just for like people who aren't good enough for tennis. And that sort of tension is still around, to be honest, to some extent, less. But those were two of the biggest hurdles, I would say, was just this like disbelief that pickleball was going to become something bigger than a very niche sport that only a small subset played.
Mm-hmm. I also think when we pitched them, we did show them numbers, right? Like, so first of all, none of them understood or knew what pickleball was. So we would start the pitch by, do you know what pickleball is? And they would say no. And then we would do the whole like, well, pickleball is, and then we go and explain what it is. And then we would try to pitch the value behind the activity and then show them the numbers. So pickleball, at that time, it was growing so incredibly fast. So we could say, there are 4 times the amount of pickleball players than there are squash players at the time. Like, that was something that they could wrap their head around, and, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then, 6 months would go by, and we would say like last year there were 2 million players. Now there are 3.2 million players. And then by the time the pandemic hit, we're now at 36 million players. So if you look at that growth, it's hard to ignore the stats and the data. And I think that's what got them thinking, okay, let me at least look into it. And then getting them on the court, they experience the fun and the addictive nature of the game was sort of like seal the deal. But also the game is so accessible. And to us, it's like, I'd much rather go play pickleball than go for a run or like some hard workout. And the fact that most people can play the game if they walk on the court and, they have a rally immediately. It's a selling point. And then, you get them hooked and they're excited about the game and they play with their friends. And now you've got an emotional connection, and it's a lot easier to seal the deal.